I'm Maddie Gordon, and I'm a woman who lives by gratitude, character, and faith.
A big part of our program is built around character. So is there anyone in your past, like a coach or a mentor, that's helped shape your character?
Yeah, for sure. I would say like the very first coach I like ever had, it was like just like rec league, but he like pushed us to be like the best that we could be on the field but off the field too. So I think like I spent like every week with him like practicing and getting better, and I remember like the first time he ever like made us do a hard practice and we were all so sore the next day, but his character like and his belief in us is something that's like stuck with me my entire life.
That's great. And what's his name?
Jamie Hensley. He's like his daughter is my age and
Yeah,
his
that's
son is
great.
my brother's age, so we've been like best friends like our whole life.
Oh, that's great. So how do you think Jamie's character influenced your performance?
It made me like everything that I did. I was like, oh, like he has this belief in like me and my teammates. Like I need to have that belief in us, and I need to do it. And then he also like seeing him grow up like me growing up, and he was always like in our church and he sings at our church,
That's
and so
great.
like his like faith also like pushed me to want to like be the best, I guess.
Oh, that's great. So he was already part of your community in other ways, right?
Yeah, he's like grew up with like my dad, and
Oh, that's great. And so how do you said his belief in you and that helped shape your belief in other people? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, I think like no matter what, like we could like be backs against the wall, and it was like he wouldn't bat an eye. Like he was like, we can still do it. Like we can still find a way
That's
to like
great.
power through and win. And I think that like made me realize that like you just never give up and you just keep going.
You just keep going, right? So that's a big part. Like the whole thing is, what gets me in baseball more than any other sport is you're in the hall or softball in the hall. So let me do it again. What gets me in softball, just like more than any other sport, is the idea that if you get hit one out of every three times, you're killing it, right? And you had the idea that, but you're not getting on base 7 out of 10 times. Can you talk more about that mindset?
Yeah, actually, you bring that up. He like stuck with me like all the way through high school and everything. And I remember after a high school game, I did like terrible like in my first two at bats, and I was like, what am I even doing? And then my third at bat, like I did really good, and it's like what my team needed at the time. And after the game, he was like, I'm like happy that you like found a way to keep going and like not let the first two dictate the third, because like that third
Great.
one was like the most important one you could have had.
Right there it is. That's a great attitude. Like you're just going to keep going. Um, so how about now on the softball team? Is there anyone whose character influences you on the team now that you're like, oh, that person I want to show up and be more like that person, or is it coach or
Honestly, my coaches, like our head coach, I've never seen someone who is like as dedicated as she is, and not even just dedicated to like the sport, but like to each of us as people. Like she actually just called me this morning
oh,
and
that's
was like
great.
just like, "Oh, I want to just check in and chat with you and see how you're doing." Like, and she like loves her family more than like
Mm,
anybody I've ever seen in my life.
right. So that's interesting because when we talk about when we work our program through first responders, the idea that even the busiest fire departments, police departments, when you look at the amount of the time they spend actually fighting fires or doing their job is this much time, and the most of their time is spent away from the job. So it's what you do when you're away from the job. So if you're metaphorically, or like, hey, if you're Superman, it's what happens when you're Clark Kent, right? That really profoundly influences your performance. So when your coach calls you and checks in, how does that feel to you, right? Does it
Yeah.
help you feel more supported?
Yeah, it's definitely good to know like, oh, like I have like people here who like genuinely care about me like more than just what I do on the softball field for them.
Right.
So like my other coaches, like I just got ice cream with them like last week. My assistant coaches, because they were like, oh, like let's meet and catch up, and like my coaches always know what's going on with my family and
Right.
everything.
That's great. That is outstanding. Wow, I love that stuff. So talk about, so what would you say is the identity of Penn State softball?
I would probably say family. We actually wear these bracelets, so they have like family, blue collar, and tough, and those are like our three like values of our team. So like
Mm,
family, we're like just show up for each other no matter what. Like it, whether it's on the field or like in the classroom, someone needs help, or like maybe someone's just not having a good day. Like go and pick them up and like show them like that they are like cared and loved about. And then
wow.
like blue collar and tough, like we're just like go in and get after it. Like doesn't matter if your back's against the wall or like maybe you're like on a roll and you're doing great. Like always just show up and do the work.
Right. That's great. Um, Right, like we talk about on the road to resilience, is the idea that you just got to keep putting those bricks in the road. Like some of them look good, some of them don't. But if you don't put one in, it kind of has a pothole, and it's not, it's not a smooth ride. So don't worry so much about what the brick looks like. Just keep showing up and doing the work. I think that's great. But I love that you led with family. I think that's great. Again, our whole thing is when you feel supported, you perform better. And it's great to see the Penn State's really like, and that makes me feel great that our home teams like live in those values. So what drew you to Penn State?
Honestly, I like looked up to softball players before me. My sister played at JMU, and then there was a few others that were there, and they kind of like turned JMU around, and I was like, oh, like that would be really cool to go in and like make something better than I found it. And I was like, Penn State's like a good opportunity, and they have great academics, and there's great ice cream here, and I like love ice cream.
3 for 3, there you go.
Yeah,
right?
I was like, this just might be the one, and it's like close enough to home. So I think, and the people and like the community like drew me here.
Right. I love that ice cream's in your top 3. That's great.
Ice cream's important to me. I love
right?
ice cream.
It's the little things in life. So, so one of the things that we also talk about in our program is gratitude. So I'm curious, like, how you see gratitude and how it might affect what you do on a day-to-day.
I think gratitude is just, like, finding the joy in the little things, like, every day. Actually, so we did this thing. It was called Discipline December, and my thing with softball, we did it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to write down, like, 5 things I'm grateful for every night, like, before I go to bed. And then I didn't realize, like, how big of a change that would be in my life. And I was like, wow, like, my, like, outlook on everything has just, like, flipped, because it's like maybe somebody holds the door open for you and you're just like grateful for that little moment, or like just like, I don't know, it's been cloudy the past few days, so like when the sun comes out, like finding gratitude in like all the little moments.
Right, but if it's not cloudy, maybe you don't appreciate the sun, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Like it's sometimes we need it not to be there for us to appreciate it. So, and I want to come back around to what you're noticing. Does you feel like all of a sudden you start to notice more? Like when you're thinking about gratitude, now you start noticing more of the things to be grateful for?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say like before, like I still do it now. I still write down every night, like, and I've been doing it for like years, like what I'm grateful for. And every day it always like is like, oh, like that little conversation I had like with my granddad, even though it might have only been 5 minutes, or maybe like today, like lift at softball, like getting to be there. Like, yeah, like lift is hard, but like there's joy in getting to be like with the people you love.
Right, it sure is. That's great stuff. Can I ask you you had 5 things you wrote down? Can I ask maybe what some of the other ones, other than ice cream? And
a lot of times it'll be like, I don't know, like if I see like a stranger and they like talk to me or like say hi, it'll be at the Y, because I work at the Y. Like when people come in and they stop at the front and they'll be like, they'll have like a conversation and actually like ask you how you're doing. I like, what else do I put? Whenever I can have dinner with my roommates, I always like write that down.
That's great. That's great. How about Big Nick Dawkins? Are you
Nick
grateful
Dawkins,
for Big Nick?
He actually, I wrote down yesterday he stopped by the YMCA, and I put that I was grateful that he stopped by.
There you go.
Because he stopped and he sat there and he was talking to us for a bit, and I was like, I'm grateful I got to see Nick today.
Right. What I like about Nick is he was a big part, Nick plays, he's a center for the football team, and he was really big in terms of like building, he's community builder, and you were one of the first people he named to be part of this program. Like, wow, you'd be a great ambassador. So I think it's super cool how that thing all kind of comes around, and now here what you add in is different than what Nick adds in. Like we all add different things, like we all play different positions in our roles are going to be different. So it's super cool to see what you guys are all adding to this thing.
Yeah.
So are there any stories that are like, for you growing up, or anything that you can think about that might have been like formative for you being you? Is it your coach you were talking about, where maybe those first 2 at-bats didn't go well, and then that last one you kind of came through? Is this anything along those lines?
I think it's kind of silly, but like when we were little, like you have like rec league and then you have all-stars, and every year, like we were really young and we went and we would lose to the same team. Like I could like tell you like everything about them, and I was like, man, like we just keep losing to them. So then each year it would be our goal like to beat them. So like I think like learning like, okay, like we failed, but like getting back up and being like, how are we gonna like come back again and win? And then eventually we did beat them, and then like we would move on and we would go beat another team, and then another like it was like learning like how can we like get up and get better even though like we got knocked down.
That's incredible. So last question is, why do you think this program is important for kids? What about this program? Gratitude, character, faith, community, resilience. Talk about that. How any of the things you think would be important for you? Or like, go back to you as a young athlete. Why would that be important to you?
I think for sure, like your whole life, you're just gonna get knocked down, and
Right.
like you're gonna face challenges and like hardships, but like finding a way like to overcome it and be resilient and like keep like the positive mindset and like just keep taking steps forward no matter like how big or small is like it's important, because especially as an athlete, like life, some days like you're the best athlete in the world, and then some days you're like, what am I even doing
Right,
here?
right.
Like, why did I choose to do this?
Right.
But like if you can have like that attitude, I mean of gratitude, even though it's kind of cliche, but like just getting back up and like just keep going and like finding the joy in it all is important. And I mean, not even just with like sports, but in school, like going from high school to college is a huge transition, or from college to working, or like just anything like that.
That's great. Maddie Gordon, thanks for being a road warrior. Thanks for being bro with me and joining us
Yeah,
today.
thanks for having
All
me.
right.